Hi there, this is Solitary Rowan from Solitary Rowan Films, and welcome to a random review. Today we go to 1971 and Masaki Kobayashi's Inn of Evil, or Inochi Bonifuro, which translates as We Give Our Lives for Nothing, which I kind of wish is the title. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I would prefer it to be called We Give Our Lives for Nothing. I might have to get a t-shirt with Inochi Bonifuro written on it. Starring the marvellous Tatsuya Nakadai, but there's also familiar faces like Kai Sato and Shintaro Katsu, who was Zatoichi. It's from the novel by Shigeru Yamamoto, who wrote the books that Sanjuro and also Kill were based on. And this is also a Kobayashi film that I'd never seen before, because a lot of his films are quite hard to find. This is, I believe, a DVD-R, because unfortunately for my bank account I have found a couple of sources on eBay for Japanese films that don't really have releases, so I have purchased quite a few DVD-Rs. I must say though that the print on this is really good. It's in widescreen. It looks absolutely beautiful. The black and white cinematography is stunning. Kobayashi's use of the frame, obviously Japanese architecture leads to frames within frames. That's probably one of the reasons why I do love Japanese cinema so much. I mean, to describe the film, this might put people off, but it's a cross between Wreck-It Ralph and The Hateful Eight. It's about this inn on this little island that is used by the owner of the inn and his daughter to kind of smuggle in goods, and there's a relationship with the local law enforcement to kind of let this happen. It's an inn that nobody goes to, nobody's allowed in, so it just has this kind of bunch of rapscallions. So it's kind of in Hateful Eight as far as just this group, this bunch of miscreants. And most of it, there's exteriors, including the amazing climax at night with lots of lanterns and long grass. But most of it is in this inn. But unlike the Hateful Eight, which features a lot of scumbags that you don't really care about, Inn of Evil, or We Give Our Lives for Nothing, as I'm now going to call it, has these brigands, but as the film progresses over its 121 minutes, you get to know them as characters and people. They're not just one-dimensional cardboard cutouts. And the Wreck-It Ralph is, these criminals, these bad people, but they maybe think about doing something that's not as bad as what they usually do, and that's where the Hateful Eight and Wreck-It Ralph similarities end. So Nakadai stars as a character, Seda, I believe, but his nickname is the Indifferent. So you're in for a treat when you've got a lead character called the Indifferent, and the alternate title for the film is We Give Our Lives for Nothing. It's fairly bleak. It's a pretty bleak film, but that's why I just thought it was absolutely outstanding and quite excellent. It may not reach the heights of perfection that certain Kobayashi films have, but it's not that far off. It's a banger. I have purchased more Kobayashi, more of his 50s melodramas, but this is more inclined with the Jaideki period. Nakadai at turns is a bad person, but again we understand and learn more about him, his childhood, his attachment to his pipe, and why he has an attachment to his pipe. Again, it's almost like a reverse Seven Samurai as well, in the sense of these men aren't noble and full of good deeds. They're kind of the opposite, but they're not irredeemable, I would say. So into this group of people comes two outsiders, even though the inn isn't really friendly to outsiders. So one of there's a kind of wandering drunkard who at inappropriate times kind of spouts philosophy, and that's played by Katsu, who's always drunk, but as I say, he has wonderful moments of clarity. And then we have this young kid who we eventually hear about his story and how he ended up there, and how that might affect the other members of the gang. There's a great relationship between the owner and his daughter, who's one of only really two women in the film. And again, you have this ragtag. There's one guy who it may be inferred that he's gay. He likes making little characters out of little bits of material. Of course, his women characters are the favourite, but not of the indifferent. He prefers horses. You've got a guy who's got a stutter. You've got a guy who seems to be dying of tuberculosis or pneumonia. So you have all these characters, but again, they all get their time. They all have their moments. And yes, some of them are focused in on more than others, but you still get an idea of who these people are. So you have new police officers coming into the region. You've got the guy who wants to get promoted quickly, and he wants to crack this system that's bringing in smuggled goods. You've got his superior, who himself is fairly corrupt, but he's kind of playing the long game, and you just have the machinations between the two groups, and then you've got the two interlopers, especially the young guy who throws a spanner. Well, he throws quite a lot of spanners into the world of this inn of evil. So again, I don't want to go too much into the plot. It's another powerhouse from Nakadai. There's a wonderful little metaphor about a fallen sparrow that Nakadai finds, and that has its own journey and subplot by itself. And the inn, the owner and his daughter, and the daughter's feelings for Nakadai, even though he doesn't like women and he doesn't want to let anybody in. So again, I don't want to talk about the details, but I'll talk about, as I mentioned before, the climax. It's probably about a 10-minute sequence, but it is stunning. And again, even on the DVD, it looks good. So I think we should phone up Radiance and see if we can get a Blu-ray. But it's at night, with lanterns. It's beautifully shot. There's another amazing scene on the water, with lots of boats and lanterns. But it's still lit well enough that you can see who's who. It is very bloody and brutal, because if you do see blood in the moonlight, well, it appears quite black. But it's a wonderful, wonderful sequence. And again, it's a film that really stands up to, as far as shot composition and the use by Kobayashi of the frame. And there's a dynamic camera when it's needed. Again, the scenes inside, you're making use of the set that you have and trying to come up with as many interesting angles and frames within frames that you can. So perhaps it doesn't have the composition of, say, Elegant Beast, which I did a review of, in which there was no similar shot, and that was pretty much all in a house. Again, there's externals in this film, but the majority of it takes place, but it's never it takes place in the inn, but it never gets dull, it never gets boring, it never gets static. Now mostly, because you are focused on Nakadai, but again, all the other actors who are familiar faces, you'll probably recognise them. There's just so many shots that are beautifully framed. You'll have multiple characters in different areas of the room, but they're all just shot wonderfully, and in focus. And as I said, that the DVD looks really good. Even if it's a DVD-R, it looks really good, so a Blu-ray would look pretty spectacular. Again, this is a later Kobayashi, 1971, and it still has little underpinnings of political points, not quite as extreme as some of his other films, but it's well worth tracking down if you can. I don't know whether the Criterion channel runs Kobayashi films every now and again, so I don't know if this one's been on it, but Inochi Bonifuro, as I'll refer to it from now on, is an absolute banger. You can see on the back, I don't know whether that's going to focus at any point, but there's the gang. What a bunch of characters they look like. It's a wonderful film. Again, perhaps not absolutely top level Kobayashi, but with Kobayashi you're talking about his top levels, some of the greatest films ever made. But as I said, it's not far off. And again, it's a wonderful Nakadai performance. Beautifully shot, wonderfully acted, grim and bleak. That's why I like it so much. With a brilliant set piece climax, and it always holds your attention, which is a good thing I've found with films. So thanks very much for watching this random review of Inn of Evil, or We Give Our Lives for Nothing, because it's always good to see more Kobayashi. I still haven't seen a bad one. I still haven't actually seen a solid one yet. They're generally always better than solid. So again, let me know if you've seen Inn of Evil and what you think of it, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.